Hello everyone, and welcome to my BNB CBS Gossip 24 channel. Thomas reminisces with Hope, Remy's unexpected Deke encounter. Thomas Forrester will reminisce with Hope Logan Spencer while Remy Price has an unexpected Deke Sharp encounter. At Forrester Creations, Hope will be down in the dumps now that she's broken the news to Deke about his firing. Between that and Hope's history with Thomas, there should be plenty of tension during their conversation on Monday's BNB episode. However, Thomas will play up how well he worked with Hope in the past. After Thomas admits he still thinks about when they used to create together, he'll insist he wants to get back to that. Hope won't seem sold on this arrangement and may feel the need to establish some professional boundaries. Just in case Thomas has any desire to mix business with pleasure again, Hope may shut down that idea and point out she's happily remarried. Of course, Thomas might assure Hope that he respects her marriage to Liam Spencer and isn't trying to stir up any trouble in her personal life. Perhaps Thomas will promise this is just about making Hope for the future the best it can be. Even so, Hope will hate the fact that Deke got cast aside. It'll leave Hope wishing she could have more input on what happens with her line, but Steffi Forrester Finnegan and Ridge Forrester have the final say on everything. As for Deke, he'll seek comfort now that his short-lived time at Forrester Creations is over. Deke assured Hope that he'd never give up on his dreams, but this will still be a tough blow for him to work through. It looks like Deke may head to Il Giardino and give Deacon sharp updates on the Forresters cutting him loose. That could leave Deacon fuming, but he'll surely end up in comforting dad mode and give Deke the support he needs. At some point, Remy will pop up and look unsettled, so he may spot Deke and overhear that he's been fired. That could make Remy eager to console Deke too, since he knows how much Deke wants a fashion career. Will Deke embrace the comfort Remy offers or push him away? Remy is holding out hope for a reunion with Deke, so stay tuned to see if he'll ultimately get his wish. In Monday's emotionally layered episode of The Bold and the Beautiful, the narrative weight settles heavily on a moment of uneasy reflection as Thomas Forrester finds himself revisiting the past with Hope Logan Spencer, a conversation charged with unresolved tension, professional nostalgia, and the quiet ache of paths diverged, while elsewhere, the fallout from a painful corporate decision sends Deke Sharp searching for solace just as fate throws Remy Price back into his orbit, creating parallel stories about ambition, loss, and the fragile hope that something broken might yet be repaired. At Forrester Creations, the atmosphere is thick with unspoken words as Hope carries the emotional burden of having delivered devastating news to Deke, a task that cut deeper than she anticipated because it forced her to confront the limits of her power within the company she helped elevate, leaving her questioning not only the decision itself but her own standing in a fashion house where creative passion so often collides with ruthless business reality. And it is in this vulnerable headspace that Thomas approaches her, sensing perhaps that her defenses are already weakened by disappointment and guilt, making the timing of his reminiscence feel both sincere and strategically complicated, as he gently steers the conversation toward the history they share, recalling the period when their collaboration was effortless, inspired, and undeniably successful, a time when hope for the future flourished under their combined vision and when personal feelings, however dangerous, seemed secondary to the thrill of creation. And Thomas speaks with a carefully modulated warmth that suggests genuine longing without overtly crossing the lines Hope has worked so hard to redraw, admitting that he still thinks about those days not merely as professional milestones but as moments when he felt most creatively alive, and as he voices his desire to recapture that synergy, he frames it as an opportunity rather than a plea, emphasizing how much the line could benefit from their renewed partnership while deliberately avoiding any mention of the emotional chaos that once accompanied their closeness. Yet Hope, seasoned by heartbreak and hard-earned clarity, is not easily swayed by nostalgia alone, and though she listens politely, her guarded responses reveal a woman acutely aware of how blurred boundaries once cost her peace, trust, and nearly her marriage, prompting her to push back with measured firmness by asserting that while she values the work they did together, the circumstances have changed irrevocably, and she now requires clear professional limits to protect both her personal life and her sense of self, especially given her commitment to Liam Spencer, whom she reminds Thomas she is happily remarried to, a statement that functions as both reassurance and warning, signaling that any hint of romantic entanglement will be shut down before it has the chance to resurface. And Thomas, ever conscious of his past transgressions and the reputation that continues to haunt him, responds with a practiced sincerity, insisting that he respects Hope's marriage and harbors no intention of interfering with her happiness, portraying his interest as purely professional and grounded in a mutual desire to make Hope for the future the strongest brand it can be. Yet beneath his assurances lies an undercurrent of emotional complexity that Hope can sense even if she chooses not to name it, because Thomas's history of conflating love, obsession, and ambition has taught her to trust actions over words, and while she cannot deny the creative spark that once defined their partnership, she also cannot ignore the cost of revisiting a dynamic that nearly consumed them both, especially when the pain of Deke's firing remains fresh, casting a shadow over the entire exchange. And reminding Hope that despite her influence and passion, the final decisions rest with Steffi Forrester Finnegan and Ridge Forrester, whose authority underscores the harsh truth that creative vision does not always translate into control, leaving Hope grappling with frustration and a lingering sense of powerlessness as she reflects on how quickly Deke's promising opportunity evaporated, a reality that troubles her deeply because she sees in him the raw talent and determination that once defined her own early struggles, and her regret is compounded by the knowledge that she could not protect him from a system that prioritizes established names and internal politics over nurturing new voices, which in turn fuels her internal conflict about continuing to pour her heart into a company where her say feels increasingly limited, while Deke himself processes the blow in a far more personal way, retreating from the polished halls of Forrester Creations to the familiar comfort of Il Giardino, where the warmth of family offers refuge from professional rejection, and as he confides in Deacon Sharp, the disappointment in his voice is tempered by a resilience he has long cultivated, reminding Hope earlier that he would never abandon his dreams even when the door he fought so hard to open has been abruptly slammed shut, yet the sting remains undeniable, and Deacon's initial anger at the Forresters quickly gives way to paternal compassion as he shifts into full-on dad mode, offering reassurance, encouragement, and the kind of unconditional support that Deke needs in that moment to believe his talent still matters. That this setback does not define his worth or dictate his future, and it is within this emotionally charged setting that Remy's unexpected arrival adds another layer of complexity, as he enters Il Giardino visibly unsettled, perhaps carrying his own unresolved feelings and unspoken hopes, only to overhear fragments of Deke's conversation and realize that the man he still cares deeply about has just suffered a devastating loss, igniting Remy's instinct to comfort and reconnect, because he understands better than most how much Deke's fashion aspirations mean to him and how crushing it must be to see them threatened, and as Remy approaches, his presence introduces a delicate question of whether shared pain can bridge old wounds or reopen them, forcing Deke to confront not only his professional disappointment but also the emotional history he shares with Remy, whose quiet hope for a reunion lingers in every gesture and concerned glance, leaving viewers to wonder whether Deke will accept the solace being offered or retreat further into himself, unwilling to risk vulnerability when he already feels exposed and uncertain, and this uncertainty mirrors the broader thematic current running through the episode, as each character grapples with the tension between past and future, between what was lost and what might still be possible, whether in creative partnerships, romantic connections, or personal ambition, making Monday's episode a nuanced exploration of how hope persists even in the face of rejection, how boundaries must be drawn to protect growth, and how unexpected encounters can challenge the narratives we tell ourselves about moving on, setting the stage for emotional reckonings yet to come as Thomas's carefully curated sincerity, Hope's guarded resolve, Deke's shaken determination, and Remy's quiet longing converge into a tapestry of intersecting desires and unresolved questions that promise to ripple through the weeks ahead, reminding viewers that in the world of the bold and the beautiful, the past is never truly past, dreams are always worth fighting for, and hope, however fragile, continues to shape every choice, every conversation, and every unexpected reunion. Picking up from that fragile emotional crossroads, the aftermath of these intertwined encounters continues to ripple outward in subtle but powerful ways, shaping motivations and exposing vulnerabilities as the characters attempt to recalibrate their sense of purpose and direction, because for Hope Logan Spencer, the conversation with Thomas does not simply end when they part ways at Forrester Creations but lingers like an unresolved chord, echoing through her thoughts as she weighs what it means to protect her present without denying her past, and she finds herself replaying his words about creative chemistry and shared vision, not because she doubts her marriage or her boundaries, but because she knows firsthand how rare and intoxicating that kind of professional synchronicity can be. A reality that complicates her frustration over Deke's firing and sharpens her awareness of how limited her influence has become within a company built on her name and ideals, prompting an internal reckoning over whether she can continue to pour her heart into hope for the future if she is repeatedly forced to watch promising talent be discarded without meaningful input from her. And this simmering dissatisfaction subtly alters the way she views her role at Forrester Creations, planting the seed of a future conflict that could test her loyalty to the brand she helped create as well as her trust in those who currently hold the reins, while Thomas Forrester, for his part, walks away from their exchange with a carefully concealed mix of satisfaction and restraint, aware that he has successfully reopened a door just wide enough to let possibility seep in without triggering hope's defenses, yet also conscious that any misstep could permanently shut it again, and as he reflects on the conversation, he frames it in his mind as proof of growth, telling himself that his intentions are finally aligned with respect and professionalism, even as he privately acknowledges that his feelings for hope, though subdued, have never fully disappeared, making his resolve to keep business and personal desires separate an ongoing internal battle rather than a settled truth. And this quiet struggle underscores his determination to prove, to hope, to his family, and perhaps most of all to himself, that he can be trusted with both creative power and emotional responsibility, a determination that may soon be tested as opportunities arise to work more closely together and old habits threaten to resurface. Under the guise of collaboration, while across town at Il Giardino, the emotional landscape is no less complicated, as Deke Sharp sits with the weight of his disappointment settling into something deeper than initial shock, forcing him to confront the fear that perhaps his dream of making it in the fashion world is more fragile than he allowed himself to believe. And although Deacon Sharp does his best to counter that fear with unwavering encouragement and hard-earned wisdom about resilience, reminding his son that rejection is often a stepping stone rather than a verdict, the sting of being cut loose by the Forresters still gnaws at Deke's confidence, especially because it feels less like a judgment of his talent and more like an impersonal casualty of corporate hierarchy, a realization that leaves him questioning whether passion and perseverance are enough in an industry that often values legacy and connections over raw potential, and it is in this vulnerable state that Remy Price becomes an unexpected emotional anchor, his concern genuine and his presence both comforting and destabilizing, because while Remy offers empathy grounded in understanding rather than pity, his closeness inevitably stirs memories of what they once shared and what was left unresolved between them, creating a charged intimacy that Deke is not entirely prepared to navigate while his sense of self is already shaken. Yet despite his instinct to guard his heart, Deke cannot entirely shut Remy out. And as their conversation deepens, there is a palpable sense that this moment could mark either a tentative step toward healing or a painful reminder of why they drifted apart in the first place, with Remy gently expressing his belief in Deke's talent and hinting that one setback does not negate the promise he sees, while carefully avoiding overt declarations that might overwhelm him, and this restraint speaks volumes about Remy's own growth, suggesting that his hope for a reunion is tempered by a newfound respect for Deke's emotional boundaries, even as he quietly yearns for another chance to prove that he can be a source of stability rather than conflict. And as the evening unfolds, the parallel arcs of these characters begin to mirror one another more clearly, each grappling with the challenge of honoring past connections without allowing them to undermine present commitments or future aspirations, whether that means Hope standing firm in her marriage to Liam Spencer while renegotiating her professional identity, Thomas striving to channel his passion into creativity rather than obsession, Deke searching for renewed confidence in his dream despite rejection, or Remy balancing hope with patience as he navigates the delicate terrain of reconciliation, and even the unseen influence of Steffi Forrester Finnegan and Ridge Forrester looms large, their authority shaping outcomes that ripple through the lives of those beneath them, reinforcing the central theme that power, whether creative, emotional, or institutional, is rarely evenly distributed and often forces individuals to adapt in ways that test their values and resolve, setting the stage for future confrontations and alliances as Hope begins to consider how much longer she can accept a limited voice in decisions that affect her vision. Thomas edges closer to reclaiming a role that could either validate his growth or expose lingering flaws, and Deke stands at a crossroads where the support he receives, from family, from Remy, and from within himself, may determine whether he emerges stronger or retreats from the industry he still longs to conquer. And as these storylines continue to unfold, they collectively underscore the enduring message that while dreams may be deferred and relationships strained, the willingness to confront disappointment with honesty and courage can transform even the most painful setbacks into catalysts for change, ensuring that hope, in all its complicated forms, remains a driving force in the lives of these characters as they move forward into uncertain but possibility-filled territory. As the emotional consequences of these pivotal moments continue to unfold, the characters find themselves drifting into new patterns of thought and behavior that reveal just how deeply the events of that day have unsettled them. Because for Hope Logan Spencer, the sense of unease that followed her conversation with Thomas and the painful decision regarding Deke does not dissipate overnight but instead settles into a persistent undercurrent that influences everything from her creative instincts to her personal reflections, and as she returns home and reconnects with Liam Spencer, she is reminded of the stability and love she has fought hard to protect, yet even that comfort cannot entirely quiet the questions forming in her mind about whether she is sacrificing too much of her voice and vision in order to maintain harmony at Forrester Creations, prompting her to reflect on the early days of hope for the future when her ideas were driven by conviction rather than compromise and when setbacks fueled determination instead of resignation. And this introspection leads her to consider whether the boundaries she is setting with Thomas are only part of a larger reckoning about reclaiming agency in both her professional and personal life, as she begins to recognize that standing firm does not merely mean saying no to inappropriate advances but also means advocating for herself and others, including emerging designers like Deke, whose dismissal has become a symbol of the larger imbalance of power that troubles her, while Thomas Forrester, grappling with his own internal narrative, interprets Hope's hesitation not as rejection but as a challenge to demonstrate consistency and restraint, and in the quiet moments following their exchange, he convinces himself that patience is the ultimate proof of his growth, that if he can focus solely on elevating the brand and supporting Hope's vision without expectation or entitlement, he may finally earn the trust that has eluded him for so long. Yet this resolve is tested as memories resurface of the intensity that once defined their collaboration, blurring the line between inspiration and desire, and Thomas's determination to rewrite his own story becomes as much about controlling his impulses as it is about proving his worth, creating a simmering tension that promises to surface again as their paths inevitably converge in the workplace, while elsewhere Deke Sharp wakes to the sobering reality that his future is once again uncertain, the excitement of his brief tenure at Forrester Creations already feeling like a distant dream. And as he replays his conversation with Hope and his father in his mind, he oscillates between gratitude for their support and frustration at his own powerlessness, questioning whether his optimism has blinded him to the harsh realities of the fashion industry. Yet even as doubt creeps in, a stubborn spark remains, fueled by the belief that talent deserves perseverance, and it is this fragile balance between vulnerability and resolve that defines his interactions with Remy Price, whose presence continues to offer both comfort and complication, because as they spend more time talking, sharing not only the pain of recent events but also the unspoken history that binds them, it becomes increasingly clear that their connection is far from resolved. And while Remy is careful not to pressure Deke with expectations of reconciliation, his quiet attentiveness and genuine belief in Deke's abilities begin to erode the emotional walls Deke has erected, leading to moments of honesty that hint at the possibility of renewed trust, even as both men remain acutely aware of the reasons they once drifted apart, making every shared glance and supportive word feel like a cautious step across unstable ground. And this dynamic is further shaped by Deacon Sharp, whose protective instincts extend beyond paternal encouragement to a subtle scrutiny of Remy's intentions, as he watches closely to ensure that anyone offering his son comfort is truly capable of honoring his vulnerability. And Deacon's influence, grounded in hard-earned lessons about redemption and resilience, serves as a reminder that second chances are possible but must be earned through consistency and accountability, a theme that resonates across all these storylines as each character confronts the consequences of past actions while striving to shape a more authentic future. And even the distant yet decisive presence of Steffi Forrester Finnegan and Ridge Forrester continues to exert pressure on the narrative, their authority over Forrester Creations serving as a constant reminder that creative passion often exists at the mercy of corporate judgment, And as whispers of discontent and ambition ripple through the company, it becomes increasingly apparent that the choices made at the top will have far-reaching implications, not only for the future of hope for the future but for the personal trajectories of those whose dreams are intertwined with its success, setting the stage for potential confrontations in which hope may be forced to decide whether to challenge the status quo or accept her limitations. Thomas may have to prove that his transformation is more than rhetoric. Deke may discover that rejection can become a catalyst for reinvention rather than retreat. And Remy may find that patience and empathy are the keys to rebuilding a connection he is not yet ready to relinquish. All of which underscores the enduring truth that in the world of the bold and the beautiful, growth is rarely linear, hope is often tested, and the most meaningful transformations emerge not from triumph alone but from the willingness to confront disappointment, redefine boundaries, and believe that even when doors close, new paths can still be forged through courage, compassion, and the determination to keep moving forward.